Welcome back to the Better Divorce Podcast, the podcast that will help you get clear on every aspect of divorce, whether you're contemplating, managing, healing, or surviving and getting through it from beginning to end, or what I like to call from confusion to conclusion. My name is Paulette Rigo. I am the CEO and founder of Better Divorce Academy, credentialed private family mediator, working in alternative dispute resolution, working with couples and individuals who typically are litigating and going all the way to appeals court. I'm a certified divorce coach who's trauma informed. And yes, I specialize in dealing with pain in the neck spouses. So that's why I do what I do, so you don't have to go through any of that nonsense. But today, I want to tackle a topic about dating, because dating, well, I don't have any experience. Well, just a tiny bit of experience. I think I've gone on 6 dates in my whole life. And I've been a serial relationship person and married. And I like to bring in experts. And today, look no further, I'd like to introduce you to Andrea McGinty. She is the author of Second Acts. It's Winning Strategies for Dating Over 50. She's also the founder of It's Just Lunch and 33,000 Dates. She's a world leader in online dating experts, sharing practical tools, no nonsense, step-by-step approaches to romance. And guess what you need when you are getting divorced or got divorced? Just getting your toe back into the water can be terrifying. So welcome to the show, Andrea. I'm really glad you're here today.
Thanks, Paulette. I'm really happy I'm here today too, because I not only have I been in the dating world for 32 years coaching people, I was married for 24 years and went through a hard divorce and five or 6 years ago. So I know what that feels like, and I am remarried too. And I met the love of my life online. And so I know what it feels like, from the confusion to the conclusion, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Well, this topic comes up a lot. It's interesting, but when I meet someone, naturally, dating doesn't typically come up too often in mediation, but occasionally when we talk about like life after mediation and the divorce is final, when we talk about parenting plans and, using that time when the children are with the other parent productively. And sometimes the topic of dating will come up. And, I do throw out the statistic that 85% of divorced people are typically remarried within 5 years. Now, both of them look at me like I'm insane. I've been smoking something I shouldn't be smoking, and I'm delusional. And they go, nope, that won't be me. There's no way in hell I'm getting remarried. Of course, they're right in the middle of it. So, but that is a statistic, and it's not changing. 5 years is the average amount of time. Now, maybe that's too short, maybe that's too long. I think everyone heals differently. But 85%, Andrea, that's a lot of people. And how do you go from being, married to divorce to remarried within 5 years, but naturally to, dating, right? Or at least putting yourself up there on some level to, in fact, find a new relationship or partner that seems to be a better fit. And we don't want to make the same mistakes again, because the statistics, again, for second and third marriages, well, they're not any better. 60% of second marriages and about 73% of third marriages do statistically end in divorce. So where you can see the pattern, it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So this is something you need to learn so you're not a repeat client, right? So how did you get involved in this? Tell us a little bit of story about why you do what you do, why you're so passionate about this, because I don't think anybody just wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to be a dating expert.
Yeah, most certainly not. They don't. In college, I was a finance and accounting major, and I have to say, I have never, ever used my degree because even in high school, I was good at fixing friends up. And 2 of my college roommates are still married to the men that I fixed them up with. So I don't know, it was like something innate that I had, but there was definitely a catalyst that pushed me into this. So it's 1990, in my early 20s, and I'm getting married, and 2 days before the wedding, my fiance calls it off. So, and I'm living in Chicago at that time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do this again. Go to the bars, go on bad dates my friends fixed me up with. That's after, of course, the agony and the crying and all that stuff. So what ended up happening, I started thinking, more and more about how could I do this? How could I do this better myself? And you have to remember, this is 1990. There's no Google. There's no online dating. There's your friends. That's about it. And so I thought, wouldn't it be really great if, just like there's headhunters for my professional life, an executive recruiter for my personal life, somebody who, instead of calling me with, job opportunities, is calling me with, I've got 3 men that fit the bill. I want you to meet them for lunch or for a drink after work. And that was the entire catalyst for starting It's Just Lunch. And It's Just Lunch grew very, very rapidly. And in 2010, so that was 20 years later, and in the meantime, there's the growth of online dating, which, by the way, is a chaotic mess at that point. Nobody knows what they're doing. Everyone's afraid of their, privacy issues. And in 2010, I get 2 offers to sell the company, one from private equity and one from Match.com. Sold the company to private equity because I saw the writing on the wall. I saw online dating was growing, and they were putting processes and procedures in place to make it safe for people. Methods of verification. It was becoming much more credible. It just wasn't, a mess. Now, there's 1,400 dating platforms out there today. Are all of them wonderful? No. But, if you're looking at the top 25 or 50 that are out there, there's some really, really good sites and apps for you to take a look at. So what happened was, sold the company. I have a couple of kids. They were really young at that point. And, we traveled for a couple of years. And then I got a phone call from my brother, who's a good-looking guy, a CFO of a well-known company. And he's like, hey, I'm doing online dating and the women are horrible. And I'm not meeting anyone. And I'm like, oh, you're doing something wrong. Give me your login and your password, and I'm going to, take a look. So I go in, and I'm like, oh, you are such an idiot. And men typically are with the photos, right? Men and the photos online, you're just like, oh, what is wrong with them? So, I fix his profile, I fix his photos, I fix everything. And within a few weeks, he's dating, quality women. And so, hence 33,000 Dates, the name of my current company, is born, because up until that point in my career, that's how many people I'd fixed up. Over 33,000 people. And I had over 10,202 marriages at that point. So, I love it. I'm good at what I do, and it's fun, and I meet people from all walks of life. And so what happened then, next, after 24 years, I get divorced, and, the kids are in their teens. So bad years, really, I'm thinking, to bring men around, right? Those formative years. And here I do what I do, and I know what to do. But, I take a couple of years, and this is something people want to think about. My new book just came out in January, and second acts, winning strategies for dating over 50. And something you want to think about. I have 15 worksheets in the book, and the very first one is about where is your head? And this is important for either whether we're single or we're widowed or we're divorced and we're 45 or 55 or 60. Where's your head at? Because if your head is still angry over everything that happened, and you can't go out on a first date without, bashing your ex or talking about the money he took, the money he hid, the custody terms, all those types of things, you are not ready for dating. You're ready for therapy, and you belong in therapy. That's where you belong. And I am not a therapist. I'm really good once you're out of that phase. And even people who call me and they have to do a 15-minute interview with me first. And if they say they're in therapy, I always ask, did you tell your therapist you're calling me? And they'll say yes. And I'll say, oh, what does he or she think? And if they say, oh, she thinks it's the best idea in the world, I'm like, fine, I can work with this person. If the therapist said, you're not ready for that, but I decided to call Andrea anyway, I'm like, you know what? I've been here for 30 some years. I'm going to be here next year. Call me back in 6 months, like get everything settled with you, heal. You've got some healing to do. And so that's why I always like to point out, my book has 15 worksheets in it and QR codes to go along with it, where I'm giving like a 5 or 10 minute mini coaching on that worksheet. So that first worksheet's really important. Where's your head at? Because your head has to be able to be in the game and be positive. I mean, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. I know that, but at least, you're 70, 80% positive, about the whole dating process. And, I get it, because it took me 5 years to go back out and date again. And in the interim, probably I'm living vicariously through my clients, fixing them up on dates and, and stuff. But when I was ready, I didn't dip a toe in. I jumped right in the pool. And my first week, and you've had 6 dates in your life.
I've never counted, but I'm just guessing,
So. Okay, about. So my first week online, I write my profile, which I don't recommend you do yourself. I had really good pictures. I had my best friend's husband, who's a photographer, take my pictures, and I didn't filter them or, do anything like that to the photos, because I want to show up what I really look like. So first week, I go on 5 lunch dates. And by the end of the week, my head is spinning because I've met 5 different men, and all of them were like fine. One was a hedge fund guy, one was a producer, I mean, they were all fine, but there's like no chemistry. But what it gave me, and this is what I want to say to women out there, look at it as practice dates, your first few dates, because I realized probably after the 3rd day, hey, I've still got it. I can still talk. I'm still entertaining. I can make them smile. I can smile. I was having fun. And I even remembered, I went out with this one doctor who was so boring. He's like a dermatologist, skincare guy. And I decided, I'm just going to shut up on this date, because he liked to talk, and listen to everything he told me about skincare. Because I'm like, I can use all this stuff. This is like a free 1-hour consult, right? And he bought me lunch on top of it. Okay, fast forward. About 2 months later, I met Jeff. I saw him, and I knew right when I walked into the restaurant. And by the way, the hostess knew me because I went to the same place for all my dates. She goes, Andrea, he's out by the bar. We live in Florida on the intercoastal, and he's out by the bar, and he's really cute. I think you're going to like this one. And married him in Italy 6 months ago. So, and I was the one who said, I will never get married again. I have plenty of friends. I have family. I've got my, 3 lovely children. I'm not getting married. And, so I get it. I get it. When you're so confused about it, and I remember going back to, get divorced, don't get divorced. And I would lay on my yoga mat during Shavasana, and all I would be thinking about was not what I was supposed to be thinking about, what was going on in the yoga room. I was like, get divorced, don't get divorced, get divorced, don't get divorced. I did this for a year in my head before I finally made up my mind, no, this is not working. And that's okay. 20 of the 24 years were a good run. And then the last 4 weren't. And so what's wonderful now is we have options. If we were 50, like when our parents were 50, there was nothing out there. How would we meet people? There was nothing. Now we've got all different kinds of things. We've got those matchmakers. We've got online dating. And if you know what you're doing with online dating and you're picking the right sites, and you're picking a site that, and I guess I'm talking mostly to women here, you want women out there, you want to pick a site that is very male centric. That, for example, if you're a 50-year-old woman, I would say go on Match.com or Bumble, because it's going to be about 80% male. So your odds are much higher of meeting men. And then once you understand, or you hire a dating coach like me to put in the algorithms and the filters, we can really get down to, the right type of people. So people that just got divorced, they have to get over fear, the stigma of online dating, the stigma of being single with all your, married friends. You kind of feel like, what did I do wrong? Am I a loser? What? I don't want to be the 7th person at the, dinner table,
Mm. Well, I love that you shared your personal journey and also that starting career with finance, and you're so, so common where we hear I've never used that behavior, right? It was like I have a degree in journalism and communications, and I used it a little bit, and obviously with marketing and advertising it helps. But yeah, if I'd only known, I probably would have gone to law school. But now this 2 things: the 33,000 dates and the how many marriages? 1,000
uh,
something.
no, over
Cut
10,200.
out 10,200 marriages. Okay. So everybody, like, let's just absorb that for a moment. I don't even know 33,000 people, nor do you know 33,000 people. I'm not really that big of a piece of people person, but I mean, I did teach dance for 20 years and I probably know yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people. People are actually astounded at how many people I actually know, and the filters you have to have so that you can think and not get overwhelmed by shall we say, external stimulus, right? And kind of mitigating outside influences in life and in your business. But Andrea, that's a lot of people. I'm exhausted just thinking about that, my dear. The fact that you're still living and breathing and you're so passionate and enthusiastic about helping more people. I mean, I don't know how many people I've coached for divorce and mediations. I've stopped keeping track at this point, but and good for you for keeping track. It just astounds me. But the amount of energy and passion you have to have, fixed up that many people on dates and to, procure that many marriages, you are no doubt the pinnacle of an expert. So if my husband were to drop dead or divorce me or whatever, you would be the first person I would call when I'm 70% or more percent over it. So I love the fact that you interview them for 15 minutes or you do like a little quick, uh, you know, meet and greet type of thing, because it's so important. I see so many people wanting to jump into dating too soon myself. And they usually send me a text message with, mascara running down their face, with a photograph. Just not a great experience. Not because who they met or went on a date was a bad or evil person, just the fact that they weren't ready. Um, and you don't want to go on a date talking about how horrible your marriage was and how horrible your divorce was or how wonderful it was either. It's really about forming a new friendship and a new relationship. But it's very common. I do see people jump into it. So my question for you is, how does somebody know when that 70-80% has arrived? Is there some sort of litmus test or, quiz they can take, or is that just, how do
Yes.
they know that they're really ready?
To date, well, the first thing I would say is on my website, I've got a 16 question quiz, and you get a score right away. And it goes through exactly what you're talking about. It's a litmus test. And it's also showing you how you stack up against people who have been successful dating. So you kind of, have a good barometer of where you're at. You're at 50%, you're on the cusp. Maybe you can do it, maybe you can't. But it'll give you a very good indication. And I would also say, before you go invest, thousands of dollars in a dating coach, um, make sure, there's things like my book, pay $30 for a book before you spend thousands of dollars, and you'll start reading, and you're going to start knowing, like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, or oh my gosh, this is terrifying. I'm not ready. And they shelve it away, for 2 years, and then they are ready. So, but I would say, go to 33,000dates.com and take the quiz. That's going to be your fastest, just way to know if you are ready or not.
Perfect. 2 years is the average amount of time that people contemplate divorce before they tell anyone. And I'm going to bet or guesstimate that about 2 years is the average amount of time that people need to heal or move past the pain and the anguish uh, before they really jump back into the fire and start dating on a healthier level, perhaps better or worse sooner than later. But I do see from my experience, the ones that are successful and have great matches. And like you said, you do have to, date a while before you find the one again. Or maybe a longer than that, or maybe you're really not even looking to remarry. You're just looking to reconnect and get back out there and be social again. I think dating has a lot to do with feeling confident and, just self-assured about who you are and what you're looking for. And do your core values match with somebody else's core values, or are they in alignment with each other? It's going to take some time, but it does take a lot of bravery. Uh, it's not easy, and there is a lot of fear. And that's the beauty of working with a dating coach, helping you get over that and knowing what to do.
I agree with you, because a dating coach is going to, one, keep you accountable. So you can't quit after a week, right? You're not going to give up. And that's what people online, they maybe end up on the wrong site. They take a look. They're like, oh, this is horrible. And they quit after a week. A good dating coach is going to research and use data to make sure that they are on the right site. And then you have a coach, just like you're a coach, I'm a coach. They have somebody who's a cheerleader in their corner, getting them through those peaks and valleys, because there will be peaks where you're really high. And then there's going to be times where you're like, oh, we went on 3 dates and he didn't call me back. It's going to happen. That's just, reality in how all of this works. So a coach is also going to be direct and honest with you. And they're not, I'm not your best friend. So I'm not going to be like, oh, Paulette, everything's wonderful. You're gorgeous. The next date will be it, and you'll be married, and we'll have a big party. No, I'm never going to say that to somebody, So, I'm going to be realistic, because it's like going to Vegas. It's a numbers game. And if you're playing the game right, you're going to do really well. And that's why I take a very strategic approach to dating, almost as if it's a business plan. And actually, that's the last worksheet in my book. It's a business plan for your personal life. And people go, what? I'm not writing a business plan for my personal life. And I go, oh, yes, you are. Because this is going to help us get you where you want to be, what you don't like. I mean, you learned a lot from this relationship you were in. I mean, the number one thing you learned is what you didn't like, right? Because you got divorced, so you learned what you didn't like. And then, maybe slowly some of the things that you did like come back into play, but at least you know what you didn't like. And we're not 22 anymore. And I don't like to call it baggage, I like to call it life experience. We're a lot wiser at 50 or 45 than we were at 22. And none of us thought, when we walked down the aisle at 25, wow, I can't wait to do this again at 50. Nobody had that thought in their mind. I can't wait to go online in 25 years.
Yeah.
nobody was thinking like that. You thought this was forever. And to know that you do have outlets now that, our parents and our grandparents most certainly didn't.
Right.
And there's, the stigma, I have to say, is almost eradicated with online dating. Look at my kids in their 20s. They're all like, oh, Mom, everybody's on Tinder and Bumble and Hinge, and they just rattle off these, sites. And they grew up with the tech. And that's part of the fear, too, with people, in their late 40s and 50s. They didn't grow up with this tech. So they're, like, scared of it, too. And then they're also afraid, like, oh, what if somebody I work with or my neighbor sees me online? And I'm like, well, guess what? They're online too. So who cares, right? I say give up a little privacy and look what you might gain. Because you're already giving it up on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things we do, or people in general, I don't mean you and I personally, but the world does when you're on social media and your marital status or your relationship status changes. You go from single to engaged to married to divorced, and it's a cycle. And it's, you change your status, like you change your profile picture every now and then. And,
Exactly.
it's a different world, though. Thinking back to life before the internet and life before the iPhone came out in 2007, before apps didn't come out till 2007, 8, 9. So, that's when it all started. When I got married the first time, I was 23 and I was 53 the second time. So, life was very different. I did do one or two dating profiles, but it was just not for me. But so let's segue into these 1,400 apps, my dear, or profiles or platforms or whatever we call them. Are they all apps? I assume they are. Are they all 1,400?
Most of them are apps too. So, when I say platform, it's interchangeable for a dating site or an app. There are some. Yes, to answer your question, all of them will function as an app. Some, though, also will function on your laptop, which here's the good part about those, and that's probably about half of them. You can search a lot faster on your laptop at night over a glass of wine, and then use the app during the day, like when you have to answer people back. But when you're searching and looking and doing filters and stuff, do it on your laptop. And then the rest, the communication can be kept on your phone or your iPad.
So you are on your phone or your laptop and you're newly divorced and you're 70% healed and you've had the advice of a professional or friends to jump back into the dating scene. How do you go about narrowing down to your top, say, 5 or 10 out of those 1,400?
Oh, sites?
Yes.
Oh, you know what? You can't even narrow it down to 5. I narrow it down to 2 because to 2 for a client to start.
Okay.
Because they'll function very differently, and I don't want them to get mixed up with the tech. And okay, so for example, let's say, Paulette, you're divorced, you're 53, and you go on Match.com. You are going to be overwhelmed at first because there are so many men on there. And you're going to have to first, use the algorithms and use the filters to get rid of a lot of the people that, don't meet what you want. It might be religion, it might be race, it could be a lot of things.
Sure.
So,
Just narrow it down to age and location or what have you. Okay.
Right. And I always try to take the location down, as low as possible while still getting, a good field of
driving to Timbuktu and yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if you're, even small towns now, can do really well with online dating. So you want to narrow it down on that site. And then what you want to do is you don't look at people and say, I'll think about him. That's the number one thing I cure people of, because when I'm on a coaching call with a client and we do these once a week. I'm on my laptop, they're on their laptop, and I have male clients too, male and female. They're on their laptop, and we'll be looking at, like, let's say, I'll use a man. We'll be looking at a man together, and I'll say, okay, and they'll say, I'm going to think about it. I say, that's not an option. You have two options here. One is delete them. Second option is we message them. Those are the only two options. Now, by messaging him, it doesn't mean we're going to marry him. It doesn't mean we're going to go on a date with them. It means we're going to gather maybe a little more information. So I give everyone sort of like a 1 to 10. So as we're looking at a man, if they're going back and forth, I don't know, I'll say, give me a number. And they say 6. I go, okay, it's above a 5. We're sending them a message. You know, if it's an 8, we send a different kind of message because we're really interested. Anything below a 5, delete. We don't want him popping up later, you know, in our feed. We just want him gone. So it's strategy. And then they have weekly homework too. They have 3 30-minute sessions without me where they're accountable to me, and they do tracking and they do messaging. And that's one of the places that people really, really fall down is the messaging, because they don't know what to say. And so they'll say really like boring things like, how's your Tuesday? You have a nice smile. Or men are even worse. You're beautiful. I mean, what do you say to that? Okay, that's, you know, is he saying that to everyone that he's looking at online? You know, who knows? So you want to be unique with your messaging, but at the same time, you don't want to be wasting a lot of time either. You know, you don't want to be like thinking about this message for 20 minutes. I get them down to where they can write a message in 3 minutes. And the message is, you know, no more than 3 sentences. And it's something unique they might have had in a photograph or in their profile. And then something you say about yourself. And then asking a question at the end to keep the conversation, you know, going. So that's the, you know, it's very strategy driven.
And for women, what are your 3 most favorite or successful apps?
For women, what are my, okay, so that's a trick question, Paulette, okay. Because I'll tell you why. It varies by region of the country. Now, if I was in New York, I would say Coffee Meets Bagel is strong. If you're in Dallas, nobody uses that app, nor have they heard of it. Raya. Okay, people like to talk about Raya, the really high-end app. The only people on that app, LA, New York, and Miami. That's it. You know, if you live in Philadelphia or Chicago, it's not going to work for you. So it's so driven by where you live, what's strong. And one of the issues is that people listen to their friends. So, you know, the Coffee Meets Bagel example, I had somebody call me last week, and she lives in Dallas, and we're chatting, and she's like, oh, online's horrible. I hate it. I go, well, tell me what you're doing. And she goes, Coffee Meets Bagel. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I go, how did you come to Coffee Meets Bagel? She goes, my best friend is in New York, and she met her boyfriend there. And I said, aha, okay, so let me tell you, you're not doing anything wrong. Coffee Meets Bagel almost has 0 people online in the Dallas market. And she's like, oh, that made me feel so much better. She goes, I was feeling like a loser. I go, there's much better. So, okay, if we're just going to be really, really general with that question you asked me, I would say it is for women. Bumble, Match, and Hinge.
Okay.
Those, pardon me, for men? For men, I would say probably Tinder Premium, and don't think that's bad. Tinder Premium, you pay a lot of money for, and it's geared toward that 40 to 60-year-old crowd. It's not the hookup crowd. So it's either called in your market Tinder Premium or Tinder X. Another good one for men is Our Time, and probably Silver Singles or Plenty of Fish, POF, Plenty of Fish. One of those. That's just, general.
Yeah.
Remember, there's 1,400 of them, and I just gave you, what, 8?
Yeah.
So
Funny.
it really, really depends on the person and where you live.
Well, I can't thank you enough for this. I feel like I've learned so much for just me to pass on additional information to my clients who are hinting or toying with the idea of dating again. So, what is the best way for people to learn more about you or find you and work with you?
Well, the best thing to do would be go on my site because you'll learn more about me, and you can also take that quiz. So go to 33,000 dates, and it's 33000 dates.com, and you can take the quiz there. It'll also give you a link for my book where you can buy it, which is pretty much like everywhere. And then there's also a link directly to me if you want to sign up, for a 15-minute talk with me. If you're really thinking about coaching, and you can schedule the 15-minute call with me, but go to 33,000dates.com. That's the best place to get the information.
Flawless. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your expertise. You no doubt have the enthusiasm, the experience, and the passion to help people after divorce date again. Thanks, everybody. Hope this has been a fun conversation. And if you're thinking about dating again, look up Andrea. Her book is Second Acts, as in the numeral 2ND Acts. So thanks, and until next time, make it better. See you soon.